Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Dennis Kaduri, a computer science student at Kirinyaga University from Kenya. And we are glad to have you all here so that we can continue with our event on JavaScript series. And my co-host is Brian Keboy and David Mwangi. You can say hi to the members, please.
Hello everyone, I'm David Munyiri. I'm a computer science student at Kirinyaga University, a fourth year, and a Beta Microsoft Run Student Ambassador. And I welcome you all to today's event. Thank you.
Hello everybody, my name is Brian Kimboy. I'm a Beta Microsoft and Student Ambassador, and I'm also a student at Kenyaga University. So thank you and welcome to our session. Today we shall not be having Charity because she's held up somewhere. She'll be there next week. So thank you.
Awesome. So that's my team that we work together to make this event successful. And we have been having a couple of events. So we started from the introduction to JavaScript. We went ahead and I looked at variables, arrays, and objects. And our today's event will be focusing on JavaScript DOM manipulation. And to touch a little bit about what was taught our last event, that was last week, 31st. So the speaker was Charity, and she talked about arrays. He talks about what is array, indexing array, accessing items in array, and also she talked about object. And that's all she tackled, and today we shall be talking about JavaScript DOM manipulation. So what is DOM manipulation? This is our table of content. We shall define what is DOM and maybe look at the 5 common ways to manipulate DOM elements using JavaScript. So we shall have accessing, changing content, styling elements, changing attributes, and handling events. And if times allows us, we shall have a small session about the form validation in JavaScript. So when we talk about DOM, stand for document object model. It can be simply be understood as a tree node created by a browser. Each of these this node has its own properties and methods which can be manipulated using JavaScript. And this is the most unique and useful abilities of JavaScript to manipulate a DOM object. So picture a DOM like this picture here. So where we have a document, it has a root element, which is an HTML document. Then we have child element, like end tag, we have title. Then on the body element, we have hrefs, we have anchor tag, head tag. And this is how a DOM looks like. And the next topic is about how to select elements in a DOM. So if you ask how to select this, my end text on this document, how can you do it? So the process of selecting element in DOM, first of all, you have to access the DOM object first. So you have to access this document first. Then we have the root element. Then access any element from there. So this is just an example of how you can select an element on a HTML file. So let's look it on a VS Code. So here I have a predefined HTML document, and I have a JavaScript file, which is empty for now. So here we shall have we have to import our JavaScript file. Then we have one example of an element. So let's have an example of a paragraph in element. So if you want to access this element using JavaScript, you use this method here. So you declare a variable, and then you use remember we said that you first access the document, then the method which you want to access. So this document dot, you use get element by ID, then the name of the ID. So if you copy this and bring it on our file, so we have our paragraph, then we have imported our JavaScript file, then we want to access this element. So we are using this get element by ID method to access that element. And if you console this variable, please kindly mute your mic. Oh. So please ensure your mic is turned off to avoid distraction. Okay, so I was saying you declare a variable master here, then you call the document, then you call the element using the get element by ID method. Then you input the name of the ID. Our ID is master. So if you save this and look it on, so this is our HTML document, and this is our element, and we have accessed this using ID. And if you see here, don't mind about the errors that are coming out. So this is the element we have selected using this get element by ID. I hope that is clear. So we can go on with the, so that's how you access element using get element by ID. So there are 5 common ways to manipulate the element using JavaScript. And one of them, we have just looked at it. We select the element using the get element by ID. So the other one is by class name. Then you can select the element by tag name or the query selector. So an example of a get element by class name, it's the same way with get element by ID, but for now you are accessing it using the class name, this class. So we might have an example of this on our HTML document. So save that. Then this is our script file that is using to select our element. So let's comment up this one. So this was happening. We have two divs here. with the same class name, my class, my class. So we want to use the get element by class name method to access those elements. And remember, when accessing element using class name, note that method return array like object. So you need to loop through you need to loop through it to access each element. So remember our for loop from the previous lessons. So we are targeting the class. This is my class, and since our method will return an array, we have to loop through. So we instantiate the array and we loop through the array and increment the length. So if we console this variable here, we should get our first div and then our second div. So let's save and look at on our document. So these are two divs in HTML, and when we select them using the class name my class, we are getting the two elements here. Then our next select method is using the get element by tag name. What I mean by tag name, like these are div element, these are paragraph element, these are div element. So when you get element by tag name, you are referring to this div element, like get element by with this div or paragraph. So this what it means: you declare a variable, then you use the keyword document dot, then the method get element by tag name. So here you are providing the element that you want using this method. So we have these three divs here. So we have the first div. This is my first div. We have a paragraph, and then we have a div with a message. This is my second div. So we want to access this. We want to select this element using the get element by tag name. Tag name is this element here. You might consider it like div, paragraph, or h1 or href. So if you pick this script here and let's comment out this. So this what's happening. We declare a variable constant, then we use the document keyword, then our method get element by tag name. Inside the parameter, we are providing the element we want. So we want all the divs in this HTML document. So we have two divs here. So our function should return two items. And remember, it's returning as an array. So we need to loop through it. So we instantiate. Then we check the length. Then we increment. Then we console the element. So, and if you save this file, and we have a look. So we have this line of code. So this is our first div, paragraph, and second div. So we are selecting the get element by tag name, and we are targeting the div element. So a div, you look here, we have the two elements. So we have the div, the first div, and the second div. So that's how you select element using the method get element by tag name. Then the third one is query selector. So what query selector does, you specify what type, or on the method, you specify which type of div you want. Maybe you want to select using the ID, or you want to select using the class. So that's how you select element using query selector. And if we have these two line of code, we add them on. So we have a div with the class name my div, with an ID my div. Then we have a paragraph with my class. And one thing to consider when using IDs and classes, IDs are case sensitive. IDs and classes are case sensitive. So this my class with small m, it's different from a class name with like a name like my class. So this and this, those are two different classes. So remember that. The same with ID is case sensitive. So we have to those line of code. Then we want to select using query selector. So our first variable, we want to use the ID to select our element. And we are using the method query selector. Query selector, you provide the hash is for the ID and the ID name. Then the same, we have another variable here. We are storing the query selector of this class. So you have to call, if it's ID, you have to provide the hashtag. Then if it's for my class, you have to use dot my class. So if you run this file, you should the first is selecting the div, this, then the second variable is storing this my class element. So this is what should be printed on our console. So if we refresh, and you can see here, so we have used the query selector method, we have used the ID to select the first div, and we have used query selector dot my class to select our second paragraph. And those are 4 ways to access elements in JavaScript. So JavaScript, that's the advantage of JavaScript. You have multiple DOM. So it's up to you to find which way is easier for you to select element on JavaScript. And our next topic is about changing content. So you can change the content of an element by modifying its inner HTML or text content property. What I meant by saying inner HTML or text content, like here, inner HTML is what is displayed on the browser. So this is the inner HTML of this element. So this is the inner HTML content of this element. This is my paragraph, is the inner HTML of this paragraph. So we want to change this inner HTML. How do you do that? So you use the method is the same. You first of all to access the document, choose which method is fit for you. Like for now, we use the get element by ID function to select our element, then use the inner HTML to access this element content here. Then you provide the new content you want to append on the element. So that's how you change the content of a element using the inner HTML or text context functions. So you might, let's try to do this. So let's comment out this one. So we have a div with an ID, my div, then this is the original content. Then we want to change the inner HTML of this element. We use this method const. So let's comment out this one. So declare a variable to store our element. So we use the document keyword, then we use the get element by ID method to select our element. Then remember to provide the name of the ID. So our ID is my div. Yes. Then use this element to access the inner HTML and change the content with then this method will replace the previous content, this, with this. Then so if you save this, so before like we call this function. So let's comment out. So before calling this function, this is our content. This is the original content. And if you look on the browser, so this is our original content. Then if you provide the function to change the inner HTML with a new inner HTML, this is a new content, and save. And if you look here, you get we have changed to the new content. So up to there, any question? Okay, so as I have said, there are two types of methods to change the inner HTML. Yes? Anyone? You can just unmute and ask what you want to ask. Or you may opt to use the chat if you are not able to talk. So we have two methods to change the inner content. So we have the inner HTML and text. They work the same. So if you use this, they still work the same. So you call the div, then you select the element using get element by ID. You can opt to use get element by ID by class name or tag name or query selector. Then provide the name of the ID. Then use the text content to change the inner HTML of this element. Then, and if you save, you'll get the same method. You'll get the, oh, I think we haven't saved the, so this is my div, save. So and boom, that's our new content. So that's one way of changing the content of an element. The next topic is about styling element. So you can change the style of an element using the style property, which allows you to modify the specific CSS properties. For example, remember you have first of all to select the element, then use the style property to style to access the specific CSS property. Then you access the property and give it a value. So like this line of code, it will access the element using the ID, then provide the name of the ID, then use the style property to access the CSS properties, then use color to access the specific CSS property, then the value of that property. So for instance, this is the color property that we are changing to red. So here we might have an example. So we have a div with an ID, my div. So we have that div here. So this is my div with that. So we want to change the background color of this element. So we might use so this is the property we need to change using the style properties. So let's comment out that. And so declare a variable const my div, then use the keyword document dot get element by ID. So this is our ID, my property, then my div. So my div, we are using the style property, then this will change the color of the text to red, then the background, it will be blue, and then the font size of this element. So the font size of this, we shall increase it to 24 pixels. So you might want to see what I mean before we do this. So let's comment out. So this is our div before we add the styles on it. And we come back and then we comment that one. So the first one, they'll add the color red on this element. So if you save that and go back, it will change the color to red. Then the next element, the CSS property, it will change the background to blue. So this is the background, it changes to blue. So the background of that div is blue. Then the third line, my div.style font size, we are increasing it to 24 pixels. So if you save that and come back, you can see the pixels is 24 pixels. So that's how you do the CSS styling. So there are so many properties of CSS you may consider covering, but these are just few of them that we have covered today. So our next topic is about changing the attribute. So you can change the value of an attribute using the
Hello.
set. Yes,
Before going to that changing attribute,
yes,
I would like to ask on the way to write those what we call property, property. Is it? Seems like they are different. The way you write them, they
yes,
differ. They differ on maybe what can I say on writing with your CSS.
yeah.
Like background, you are. It seems like you are concatenating those words, or you can write them as the way you write or represent them in a CSS.
For the purpose of this event and the way we are running the JavaScript, so this is the recommended way of accessing and styling your element using the DOM manipulation.
My question
So
is
there
on
might, yes,
my question is on the way you write, like font size,
yeah,
style dot font size. Seems
yeah.
like they differ on the way you write in DOM and the way you write in CSS, or you can write they are similarly.
No,
No,
they differ.
they differ.
Yeah, because we are using the DOM manipulation to access this element. This is the way we should do it. So you are, I mean, you are, I get your question. So if you want to style this using the normal CSS way, you might come here and add the style tag, then access this div using this ID. So that's what you are meaning. So this is an ID, so it's hashtag my div, then open the bracket, then that way. So then the like color, maybe to blue. So this is the normal way, and
I,
it's
I mean,
work.
let's say in style what element.
Yes.
When we want to change a background color, we write background and then dash color. Is it? Or we can write a background. But when we come on DOM
Yeah.
manipulation, we write
Yeah.
background color by concatenating those words. Or you can write the way you write in a CSS.
No, it's the
Background.
same. If it's the property, if there's a background color property, it remains the same, the background color. So the same way we will write the background color.
Can you see
That's way.
there is a dash here? Background dash
Yeah.
color.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh,
Background dash color. But when in the DOM, we write
Yeah.
background color by concatenating. Can you see?
Oh,
Dennis,
yes.
can I be able to maybe interrupt and maybe try and explain in another way, maybe that Max can be able to understand?
Yeah.
But, the way we are writing the background color, maybe we are using the DOM, that's JavaScript, right? So we are writing it different, and it's not the same as when we are writing the CSS. So when you're writing the CSS, we will find that background color has an hyphen, but now we are writing the JavaScript part of it. So JavaScript part of it, you can remember that when David Mwangi was presenting, say that we are mostly using the camel case, whereby you find the background, then the color is in capital letter. So that's how we style we style our codes using JavaScript. So that this is now the difference between the two. So I think that's what you're trying to maybe to ask, the difference why we're using background color differently with how we are writing the CSS.
Yeah, yes, I get you.
Yeah. So this
Yeah,
now
that's the
this
difference.
yeah.
We use the camel case, and if you look even the method, it has the camel case. The first letter of the first one is small case, and others are starting with capital letter.
Okay.
Yeah. So we are done with styling the element. Let's move on to the changing attribute. So I was saying we use the set attribute method to change an attribute of element. So using this line of code, document dot. So you remember always you have to select the element you want to change. Then call the method set attribute to change the attribute of the element you have selected here. So then the set attribute, it has two arguments. It has the first argument, the attribute the attribute of what you want to change, and the new attribute you want to change. So, and this is an example of changing the attribute of an element. So we have this image. So we might have let's have one image on so let's use this background image here. So we save it. Save image. So let me see whether I have an image on my. So we have an image like this one. Oh, no. Oh, let's pick a random image on browser. So JavaScript image. Okay, so let's have this image, save as. So let's remember to save where your working folder is. So this is my working folder. So let's call it image1. And the next image, so that you can have two images, so that you can change from one to another. Save image. Let's call it image2. Done. So let's go back to our code. Comment out that one. Let's use the image. Source. So let's our first image here. Let's use our first image, image1. So, and if you save, Okay, the name of the image. So it's image one, yeah. Save. So that's our image here. And we want to change the attribute of this image. So we want to change this image to this second image using the DOM. There are so many ways of changing. You can probably write it here. So, but for the purpose of this class, we'll use the DOM manipulation way. So let's comment out that one and come back on our code. So we have our image. There's an ID of image. Let's give it an ID of image. ID. Image, so that we can use the ID get element by ID method to select this element. Save there. So, and I use this method to change the attribute of our element. So cost my image document, we are using the get element by ID method. So our name of is the ID we are using to select our element. Then we are using the function set attribute to change our attribute of our image element. So the first is the source. So the first argument is what you want to change. You want to change the source attribute. Then we want to replace it with a new image. Our new image is this image 2. So in our next parameter, we shall include image 2.png and save this and come back in our browser. This should work. So we have an error. Let's look, check what is it. So it's, we are selecting the so it's, sorry, it's not a PNG, it's a JPEG image. And if you save, come back. Yeah, so we have changed the source, the attribute of our image source from the first image to the second image. And that's how you use the set attribute method to change an attribute of any element in JavaScript. So always the set attribute has two parameters, the attribute of what you want to change and the new attribute you want to add on the old element. And the final one is handling event. So you can add an event listener to element using the method such as and event listen. So like this example here, we are getting the element using ID, so my button. Then we have the method and event listener. Then we always event, the event listener has two parameters. There's the first, the event, and the callback function that you want to fire when the button is clicked. So this might be an example. So we have a button. We have a button with an ID, my button, and it says click me. So well, we want to add an event using this button. So you call that button using the you select the element using the get element by ID. So our ID is my button. Remember here to include the ID name, and remember it's case sensitive. So if you use capital M here and you use small m here, those are two different IDs. So the IDs should be the same. IDs are case sensitive. Then use the variable and the event listener method. And the method we are listening is click. So when the button is clicked, they should call out this function. And what the function says, the function it says alert button is clicked. So let's have this button on our HTML. Comment out that one. Let's have button. So we have a button, click me with an ID, my button. So this is our button. Then you want to fire a function when we want to fire this function when the button is clicked, and the function is to alert as the button is clicked. So on our JavaScript file, comment of that one. So our function here. So always you may opt to use get element by class name or get element by tag name or get element using query selector. So it's upon you. So for this event, for this example, we are using the ID, and also you can opt to use the class name. So you can use class, save there, and remember here. So we are using the class, so you can use here get element by class. Then you provide the name of the class. So our name of the class is my button. And what we want to do is add an event listener. Our event listener function, it listens for click. And when it's clicked, it should call this function here. And what function is returning, it's alert as the button is clicked. So save there, come back here. And so this is our button. So if we click this button, it should alert as the button is clicked. So if you click, so I think we have not saved our work. So let's use by class name, was ID, my button, yes, function, yes. Then save my button, class name, ID. We are using the ID, event listener, my function, button, clicked. And let's click it. Yeah, so it's working. So if you click button, it's writing as button clicked. So that's the so that's our last 5 ways of manipulating DOM elements. And thank you guys. So our next small task is about handling a form validation. So the easy way to validate your form. So there are so many ways of validating a form using JavaScript, but validate our form. So in our index file, let's delete this, and we have a small form here, just a simple form, HTML form with the name, email, and password, and a button, of course, to submit our form. And also it has a function that fires back when you click the submit button. So if you save that, so this is our form. So we have these 3 inputs here and a submit button, and we want to validate this form so that the user cannot submit an empty form, maybe an input name with less than 3 characters. So on our form, let's include a script here now. So anytime you click this button, it fires this function. So let's call that function here, function validate form. So function validate form, then we have to access this element. We are selecting this element. So the way we shall select those elements, we shall use the ID element function. So we shall use this. So we have those 3 variables here. We have for our first is name. We are selecting the name using the get element by ID. We have the second one for the email and the third one for the password. And our first validation is to trim out any white spaces from, like, let me show you somewhere here. So if you look on our elements here, we have a function there like get element by ID. So we are providing the name of this label. So ID, the name, then we have the ID of our email here, and the ID of our password. Then we are targeting the value of that input. Then our first validation is trim. The trim function is a built-in JavaScript function that removes any white spaces character from the beginning or at the end of a string. So you might, on our form, what I mean the white space is like It spaces, like you might be entering a name, then you by mistake you put a space at the beginning or at the end of the name. So that's the work of this team function. So that's our first validation. So that's the first validation. So our next validation is to check if the inputs are empty. And we are using the if rule, if to check the elements, the values of our element. So we are using if the name is equals to empty, or this is a logical operation. It means or element email is empty or password is empty. You should alert, please fill out the field. So if you save that and come back on our home. So remember, our validation is to check if the name, email, and password is empty. So if any of them will be empty, like if you mistake leave the email part empty and input password and submit, it will alert you the please fill out the all fields. So this is a function that's checking the empty element of every input. So any of these, and we are using all logical element. So one of these, if it misses, if it's empty, it should return this. Then what if you have provided everything? Our next validation is the length of the character. So you might consider validating if the user is inputting the name to not to be less than 3 characters. So I'm using also if, then name. Remember our ID here, name. Then using the 3 equals sign to check, we are using the name, then the dot length function to check the length of our name element. So if it's less than 3 characters, they should alert as the name must be 3 or more characters. So if you go back, let's make sure you have saved, save. So this is our form. Remember, our first validation is to check if any of input is empty. So if you leave that empty, email you provide and password you provide, it will allow you that determine. So if you input that, leave email blank and password you provide, it tells you to, it alerts you that all field must be filled. Then our next validation is to check the number of characters on the name input. So if you put less than 3 characters, then you provide others where. So that's our first one. So our first validation, it will work so that it will work like our first validation here, it will pass because every element, every input as is not empty. But the second validation, it will not pass because our name input, it has less than 3 characters. So if you submit, it tells that the name must be 3 or more characters. And that's a basic way of validating a form in JavaScript. So, and what if you provide more than 3 characters in the name? So it should maybe arat as there. Arat validation first. So if all the input passes the validation process, it is should alert as validation passed. So let's save that. So remember, if you don't input something, it will prompt you that all the field must be filled out. Then if you provide name with less than 3 characters, it will tell you the name must be 3 or more characters. Then our land validation is then after, if you provide everything, it should alert you the validation is passed, and now you can go on to save this data on database or wherever place you want. And that's all from me. And unless anyone has a question. Anyone with a question? So I'll be sharing the notes on the chat. Let me share the post. You can see this a blog I wrote on this hash code. So let me share the notes with you. In the chat. So that's the slide that I was using. And Boy, do you have anything to say? Or David? Then the next form I was to share is the...
So for me,
yes,
is to thank the members for attending our events since the first time we started our events. And then I would like to motivate the members that join the events on the way to continue attending our events. And they should know that there's a token they will gain from attending our events. One is skills, they are going to skill up. And then another thing is that they are LinkedIn premium vouchers for those who are consistent in attending our events. For example, last week we shared a number of vouchers to maybe 10 individuals. So if you continue attending our events, so you might be the next person to get the LinkedIn vouchers and such. So be consistent and always be there to ensure. Maybe if you have a question, reach out to me or Dennis or Brian or Charity, and they will always be there to help you. Thank you.
I can see Fidel has raised his hand.
Yeah, I had a question. I can see in the chat someone said that there have been 4 sessions so far, and apparently this is my first session. So I was wondering, is there a community or WhatsApp group where like communications are made, because I have been missing out on this?
Oh yeah, we have a group, a WhatsApp group. So let me share the group, the link here, and also I will share also the previous recording, so that you can have a look of what we have been doing. So let me share the WhatsApp group. Our WhatsApp group has over 100. So let me see whether I can.
More than 150.
Yeah.
Okay, I would wish to maybe clarify what I've maybe given out in the be having our projects with JavaScript, like now building some real projects with JavaScript. So because I think this is our 4th session and we have covered a lot. So this is the time whereby we would wish to maybe look at what can we do with JavaScript, because we have been covering some content. And yeah, beginning next week, don't miss out. So it will be a very interactive session. So we shall be having projects from our side. And then after we've done the projects, so it will be now the time for our attendees. Maybe we shall give out some projects that you shall go and try out. And maybe later on, if you face any challenge, maybe in the project, we are always there to help. So let's always use the WhatsApp group to communicate. And in case of any inquiry, you can reach out, and yeah, we are ready to help. So this far it has been because of our consistency. So let's keep doing so. Thank you.
Yeah, and also for the purpose of certificate issuing, yeah, I always send a form. When I'm sending a form on the chat, make sure to fill out so that we can track who attended the meeting, the event, so that we can give the certificate at the end of our series event. So make sure to fill out the event form. Then make sure to join our WhatsApp group. I have shared the link on the chat, and also I'll share the recording, this today's recording and also the previous recording. They are on the YouTube, so you can just I will share the link there. Go watch, share, subscribe, and everything will be good. And once again, we are glad to have you all.
Thank you all for attending the event. Thank you.